I was medically retired July 2011. Had to move back in with mommy and daddy because I couldn't live by myself. I couldn't drive, and my seizures weren't under control.
I'm bringing you Shauna Barnes. Shauna is one of those veterans that went through hell fighting the system due to some illnesses and things that just happened to her, and she found a really creative outlet to help her rehabilitate herself and what she's doing and actually do some course correction on the health of her life. Enjoy the story. Hey, got something really cool I wanted to run by and let you know what's going on. So I'm starting a group that will start taking a deep dive into each one of these episodes. So we'll collectively come together and talk about the shows, talk about the guests. I'll be bringing back some of the guests to do some Q&A sessions and really take a further dive into their story, their journey, the episode, talk about, maybe some of the things you wish I would have asked on the episodes, do some Q&A sessions and the like. As a friend put it to me, it's really like a book club, but for the podcast. So a couple times a week, we'll go in, we'll break down the favorite shows of the week, and have cool discussions around everything that we've heard, we've learned, and want to know about their journey. Some of these guests will come in and they'll teach part of, what makes them awesome at what they do. And then, as always, I'll be providing regular value and content in this group. It's really cool because this only is going to cost $5 a month to join this group. And you'll be able to come in, interact with everybody else in there. So I'll put a link right in the show notes for this that you can jump in, come have a conversation with us, and we will really deep dive into each one of these episodes and help us all rise up together. Thanks for tuning in, guys. It's going to be a great show today. Having the show wasn't something I started out to do, but the day I found out somebody wanted to really sponsor the show was a really, really cool experience. So guys, I want you to take some time to go check out Point Blank Safety Services and their new nonprofit, Blue Family Fund. These guys are doing some really, really cool things, and Stacy McGovern, who's the CEO over there, has been a dear friend, and she was a guest on the show. But these guys are literally taking, the off-duty officers and putting them out in security guard role. And here's what's cool about it is, as they're protecting our lives, they don't make a whole lot of money in that regard. No first responders are paid for the value they provide for our safety and our health and taking care of us. So these guys, Stacy and her team over at Point Blank Safety Services have really found a cool way to give back to these officers by helping them provide an additional income so they can continue to support and protect us. So do me a favor, guys. Seriously, go check out pointblanksafety.com and then go look at their nonprofit, which is Blue Family Fund. Now, this nonprofit was created because of the success of Point Blank Safety Services. They wanted to give back to the families of fallen officers and be able to give scholarships away to the families of current, police officers. So do me a favor. It would mean the world to me if you would go out and help support this show by supporting Point Blank Safety Services and their nonprofit Blue Family Fund. Just tell them Donnie has sent you. You heard it on Donnie's Success Champions, and Stacy will take a tremendous and amazing care of you. Thanks, guys. Hey guys, this should be another fun episode. I'm bringing in Miss Tonia Adleta. Look at that, I said it right.
You did.
So this is going to be a fun story. But you know me, guys. I'm not going to go off and read all the bios and everything. So Tonia, welcome to the show, hon. Please share your story.
Thank you, Donnie. I am so happy to be here. Let's see. That could be a very complicated story depending on where we start. Let's see. So, we're talking about this idea of the failures, the messy life, all that kind of stuff. And I think as entrepreneurs, we are nothing if not messy. And sure. When you get into that space of the self-awareness, I feel like that's really where the magic happens. For me, that moment started on the green carpet bathroom floor of a mobile home that I bought just after my divorce from my kid's dad. And I have the ubiquitous title of being the twice divorced wedding planner. So there's a bit of irony there for you. And in that moment, this was divorce number one. There's this quote that I love from Plato that says the unexamined life is not worth living. Mm. And I think that was my moment where it was just kind of like, okay, am I actually going to take a look at my life? What brought me here? What caused this? And am I willing to make a change? Because the reality was the life that I was living wasn't even one that I wanted. I'm burning the candle at both ends, quite literally. And that was the result. So I look at that as kind of being the big do-over button. But, when you talk about messy, oh yeah, that was messy.
Yeah, I would say so. I had that kind of journey on mine is I got tired of making other people rich through my sales career. So I jumped out of my own. So I just picture that green carpet in my head and it doesn't bring up good memories as, sometimes in my life, but.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It was even, it was hunter green. And there were bleach stains from, the previous owner or the previous tenant or what have you. And I remember whoever it was spilled them, it was towards the door. So I remember thinking if I could just figure out how to get on my hands and knees, I could crawl and I could follow the dots. And then, I'd focus on this one and it just gets bigger and bigger and whiter and whiter and everything then was white, which was kind of nice because then I didn't have to think anymore in that moment. There's definitely a beautiful side of being in that, I think that level of pain. There's something about the grace of being in it, and there's so much to learn and so much to experience in it. And so often we tend in our society to want to blast through the pain and do anything we can to mitigate it as opposed to learn from it.
Oh, that's the absolute truth. I think, in the military, they use this phrase all the time, embrace the suck. And it's that whole thought process that you got to go through it so you can become it. And I think a lot of people, as they're caught in the middle of it, yes, they're wrapped in that thought process of it's not going to work. It's not going to get better when everything is learned on the backside of it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it wasn't, just the idea that, it wasn't until I could really be in that moment and really grasp it before that you kind of try to internalize the process, I think, and really be able to get so much out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's amazing. So where did your journey take you from there? You go through this huge life, I'm going to call it crisis, but at least life learning moment.
That wouldn't be too far off, yeah. So I was a stay-at-home mom when my kids were really young. I'd actually started my first wedding planning company when I was a junior in college. So this is, fast forward a few years from here, I've come back to the East Coast. I was in corporate events for a while and then took time off to be with the kids. And then I got back into a corporate setting. And at the time, I was maybe a year, if even that much, back into the corporate career. And that fall, the company announced that they were going to do layoffs. And it was one of those things where I very much literally raised my hand to volunteer to be in the first batch of layoffs because I just couldn't handle that kind of ambiguity at that point in my life. And there was nothing in my world that made sense to me to a certain extent, and the idea of this was supposed to be the forever fairy tale.
No, wait a minute.
I was still grieving everything.
So literally the company announces you're going to be laid off and you were the tribute from,
Pretty much. Pretty much. That's a great way to explain it. Yeah. Well, and there were so many things that had already started. I had started doing weddings again on the side. prior to the marriage ending. And I think that there's a certain element of me kind of coming home in that space. And so there were so many moving pieces at that point that it was like, okay, something about this dynamic isn't working for me anymore. And I'm not really sure what it is. And at the same time, I know that this is not going to work, like this environment, not knowing, and they did it terribly. And you're like, there's so many different things in corporate culture that you can learn from. This was a classic case of how not to announce a layoff. They had no idea what they were doing. Morale plummeted. I mean, it was terrible. So to be in that kind of environment day in and day out when I'm still trying to put all the pieces together. And by the way, they didn't provide health insurance. Like they only provided it for the first, year or so worth of employment. So here I was, a newly single mom. My kids were 4 and 5, 5 and 6, somewhere right in that range. And I was working at Starbucks for 20 hours a week in order to get benefits. So I was working from 5 a.m. until like 8:30, run to the bathroom, change into my professional clothes, grab a triple grande caramel macchiato with extra drizzle, run out the door to the corporate gig. And I was there from, 9 to 5:30, and then racing to get the kids from the after school, type of a, aftercare type of a thing. That was the reality that my life had become when my body finally just gave out. And it turns out that I was actually producing so much adrenaline that my heart couldn't keep up with it because I was constantly living in a fight or flight mode. So, when you take a step back, and again, that idea of Plato's challenge of really examining your life, it was one of those like, well, duh, of course this isn't sustainable. Something has to change. And so it was, I think, layer upon layer that everything that I thought I knew, that I thought I could rely upon, shifted in a way that invited me in a much deeper way to really get to know myself and to understand, who I am, what I'm all about, what's important to me, and how am I going to choose a life that is in line with that, as opposed to trying to be the square peg in the round hole.
Yeah, that's huge, because I think so many people think they know themselves, but they really haven't dialed into themselves.
Oh my goodness, yes.
To be self-aware. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes a straight right punch to the face to figure that out. So I'm glad you got there. It sucks the way you got there, but you still figured it out. So now, God, that's crazy. So you're working at Starbucks in the morning.
Yep.
And then you're working a full-time gig. So anybody out there that says, I don't know how to make enough money, shut up, because that's a lot.
When you're in it, sometimes like all you can do is just be in it and do what's directly in front of you. And I think that, especially you get to so much of this, we live in a life of memes now. So it's like you get all these little sound bites of go out, make a difference, and go out and choose your life. And, I believe all of those things, but it's not so simple just to say like, go do it. There's a process to it. There's a way of understanding who you are, what makes you tick, and then how to optimize what you're doing so that you can start to make these bigger changes. I'm all about leap in the net will appear, but at the same time, let's use a little bit of strategy to go along with our soul-based stuff. Like that's one of my favorite things. I like to say that I'm the place where soul meets strategy, because you have to be able to have both and have that kind of a connection, in that space.
No, and I love that. Because I am definitely the Uber risk taker, plunge in head first and then figure it out.
Right.
Drives my wife bonkers, but but I do get the strategy behind it, because I'm always the guy that looks back and goes, dumbass, if you would have done it this way first, right, you wouldn't be where you're at.
But then that helps you for the next gig or,
absolutely,
the next project, all the rest of it. We're constantly internalizing all of these learnings and then reapplying them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So walk us through a little bit now of some of the things you do now. I know you're a wedding planner, you're, is that all the stuff, all the world? What are you into now?
Oh gosh, no. So I kind of joke that I'm like the classic serial entrepreneur, because at any given point, there's at least 7 main projects and or brands that are happening all at the same time.
This is a huge point. Let me jump in just 2 seconds.
Yeah.
That's the difference between an entrepreneur and a business owner.
Yes.
It's a business owner has this one business, 'cause that's what I am, a business owner. I 100% say that all day long. Is I have one business, this is my passion, this is my thing, this is what I do, right? Everything is around my brand. That's my business. An entrepreneur is a person that can't turn it off, right?
Yeah.
They're constantly.
As much as I would like to sometimes.
Right. But they're always working on the next thing, the next gig, the next business, the next, right? You're never going to put them into one box. So
Yeah.
I love that. So
well, and thank you for drawing that delineation, because I think that so often people don't understand the difference between the two, and there's a lot of assumptions that are made on both sides of that coin. So I really appreciate your definition and really identifying the different moving pieces there.
absolutely.
So the wedding brand is Arabella Events, and it's named after, I'm so the genealogy nerd in the family. It's named after my grandmother's great grandmother. And I got this pile of documents that was handed down to me from my grandmother, and in it was this love letter that was written to Arabella in 1812. And so just this idea of like the legacy of a love story, I mean, come on, the branding found me. Like I didn't have to work for that at all. It was all.
Tell me you're at least using that letter as part of your marketing.
Oh, of course I am. Of course I am. Yeah, we've got the little wax seal, the whole 9 yards.
So there's an old family picture of me, just to do my little genealogy of that, of like my great grandmother, right? There's just one, just one of those old timey photos of her. And if you literally block her from the nose up, and just see her eyes, it looks like me. I mean, spitting
Oh,
image.
wow.
I don't want to ever use her story, that's part of influence my life, because she was a madam. So I don't think I want to,
That's
tell
so
the world that,
interesting, though.
right? But so I get my looks from a madam, which is.
Well, there you go. That is too funny. Well, and it cracks me up because, getting into all the genealogy side of things, I was absolutely devastated as, probably like middle school, you're doing all of these family projects to find out what your roots are and all this kind of thing. I so wanted an Ellis Island experience. I so wanted to find that family member who came across and went through Ellis Island and, everything that I was wrapped up about in that phase. Well, it kind of sort of didn't get Ellis Island because we came up from the Mayflower. So I'm like, oh, okay. But I was actually disappointed, at first of going, that is a pretty amazing legacy. And you talk about, again, having that entrepreneurial mindset and being able to blaze the trails and all that kind of stuff. There was a lot that I could identify with, and it was really fulfilling for me as an adult to look back. But to a 12-year-old kid, I was crushed.
So upset over the whole Pilgrim thing when you wanted to be the Statue of Liberty thing. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's pretty much what it was. And then to add insult to injury, my maiden name is Arsenault, and obviously it's a very French name. Arsenault would be the correct pronunciation. So I'm thinking, well, okay, I didn't get Ellis Island, but at least I've got roots in France and I can hold on to this, Francophile thing. No, not so much. French Canadian. So it's like a 1-2 punch here. Who am I?
Nice. Well, if
Yeah.
it makes you feel better, I don't really have the Ellis Island story, but my grandparents came over when they were like 2 and 3, and we still got the trunk they came in. But
Wow.
we're Polish, so I'm fully a Polak, which I love telling people. But
Right. So how many jokes do you have in your repertoire?
oh, my favorite one is, how do you get a one-armed Polak out of a tree? You wave.
Oh.
But yes, we have a ton.
I can only imagine. Oh my goodness. That cracks me up.
Nice. So
yes,
7
it's going back to Arabella. Sorry, I kind of,
No, it's fun. It's fun.
But yeah, so the wedding brand, you've got Arabella Events as kind of the full service wedding and event planning, more of that like VIP one-on-one connection. And then we're getting ready, hopefully within the next 3 to 4 weeks, we're getting ready to launch weddingplanningdiy.com, which is a video membership program that basically captures the last 20 years worth of experience in planning weddings. And it's for the couples that were never going to hire a planner anyway, but they're totally in over their heads, when it comes to the planning process. And then later this year, we've already been doing floral design for a number of years, but we're coming up with a new brand that will be all pre-designed floral. So you go to the website and you say, I like that bouquet in this color palette, and I'll pick it up on Friday.
Nice.
So that's going to be really fun. So that's like the whole wedding side. And then I also, it's been fun.
Well, I planned my entire wedding.
Nice. I love hearing that.
You know, my wife was working, she was managing a restaurant and putting in a tremendous amount of hours. I was a sales guy at the time, so I had a little bit more flexibility. But yeah, out of everybody, I'm the only dude I know that planned our entire wedding.
I love that.
You know,
I take a really strong stance on things like that. Like, you know, regardless of who makes up the couple, I feel like it is so incredibly important that they plan the wedding together. And when I see all of this crap about, you know, oh, well, it's the bride's day and all this other, I don't buy it. And I feel like this is the time that you guys are coming together. You're bringing your inner circle together. This is supposed to be about who you are as a couple and about your love story.
I love that. I mean, my philosophy was I was paying for my own damn wedding. I wasn't making sure I got what I was going to.
There you go. Yep. And that is an absolutely huge piece too.
Yeah, she was there for the entire, I mean, she picked out the dress, picked out the flowers, the bouquets and everything else. I was just the one that handled all the transactions and picked the vendors and all that. So
that's huge.
Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome.
So it was fun. It was fun. So
yeah, it sounds like it.
Wow. So weddings, flowers, what else are you into? Holy cow.
Yeah, so that's all on that side. And then I also work as an event strategist with entrepreneurs, you know, when they're doing executive retreats or masterminds or live events, like that kind of stuff. I love anything that gets into the strategy of bringing people together and making a difference because those people are all in the same space. Like that, I love that kind of stuff. So there's that. And that's the Events Collective, which is just all sorts of fun stuff. And somewhere in that space, I started speaking and I started doing workshops and all of this different training. And, you know, we talked earlier about the idea of like who we are and that self-awareness component really driving so much of what happens. In this idea of pursuing my training and really, again, kind of distilling who I am and what I stand for, I got called out by a friend of mine who said, you know, nobody's talking to the single parents. Why aren't you? And it was just that piece, you know, because I am a single parent. I've got two amazing teenagers. And there was a piece in me that was like completely resistant to the idea, because it's not only is it hard to be a single parent, but you get all the victimhood and there's a lot of labels and there's just so many different layers to have to unpack. And there was a piece of me that's like, I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. However, as I started really thinking about it, you know, like when you get those ideas going, this isn't going away. I think there's something here.
Or it's waking you up in the middle of the night, those type of things.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. That's exactly what it was for me. And so I put together this event, we debuted last year called the Single Parent Summit, and it's a virtual live event. And my goal in this was to create a type of community and also a resource bank that I would have killed to get my hands on 10 years ago. You know, when you're in it and you don't know what in it means. So that's what we created. We went from 0 to execution in, I think it was 9 weeks.
Love that.
11-day event, 45 speakers. It was insane.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't been planning events for the last 20 years, I don't think I would have had the skill set to be able to pull that off. So that was last year. We've revamped everything for this year, and we're getting ready to come back again on July 18th. And we've got an amazing Facebook group that we're building out with us as well. So like that's just been incredibly exciting, incredibly fulfilling. And that then dovetails me into the last component, which is recovering church girls.
Recovering church girls.
Yep.
All right.
And
Tell
that's
me about
been a lot of fun. Well, that's a podcast that's in the works. And actually Single Parent Summit will be a podcast as well in addition to the live event. And on top of that, it's allowing me to come back into my coaching roots and really get to that place of, again, who are we really as opposed to who are we told to try to be, or, you know, mirroring someone else's life or expectations. But when you look at, for me anyway, my experience growing up in a very conservative, evangelical, fundamental, you know, environment, there was so much that was demonstrated about my value as a woman, my faith, my spirituality, my sexuality. All of these things came back to, again, just so many different layers. So when the entire premise is based on the idea that everything that's wrong in the world is because of a woman's sin, you better believe that that's going to show up in a lot of different ways. So that is, in a nutshell, what recovery
I was really
for girls
enjoying
is
the
all
fact
about.
that I could just blame you guys. I mean,
Of
us
course,
guys.
yeah, you and everybody else. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with the, what we call the purity culture. But, the idea, I got a purity ring when I was 16, and what was laid out for me was, pretty much you trade this in for your engagement ring. And there's always going to be some level of, binding in that process. Well, what happens then when that marriage didn't work out? And what kind of guilt do you go through? And, how much of your identity is wrapped up in what you've been told to value as opposed to what you've really taken the time to choose to value.
Well,
so
and that's a huge point, because I think people are, not brainwashed is a strong word, but they're coerced to think and believe a certain way. And if they challenge that thought process a lot of times in their upbringing, then they're going against the family, or they're going against the church. They're going against that, which is a whole nother episode. But, it's, I love the fact that you're taking this on, because what I tell people all the time is if you don't get your home life right, your work life's going to suck too, or vice versa. And, religions and personalities play such a huge role in people's private lives that, people are scared to let people see that raw side of them. So good on you for tackling that.
Thank you. Thanks. It's been incredibly fulfilling. And I think there's also this piece of me that it's good that I'm scrappy. That I'm kind of have that fighter in me, because it took me a really long time to come back to myself in that, I've always been the stubborn independent. My parents teased me, the first thing I said was do it self. And that's always been my mantra. So to be able to kind of rely on that, and the idea of, the so-called friends that are, it opens some really interesting information and conversations. I've basically to tell on me as a 41-year-old grown ass adult. There's this thing of do you know what your daughter's saying? And they're yeah, we talk about it already, So it's fascinating, all the layers to it.
Well, and I think and I love that, because one of the things that I enjoy is my nieces, in particular, they're in their teens. One just turned 16, the other one's 15. I'm the cool uncle. I don't have kids,
nice.
But I've always positioned myself as I want to be the guy that they could come ask whatever. Whenever,
I love that.
Right. So, I mean, there's sometimes they come up and they take advantage of it. And even I, take a gut check. I'm like, shit, they just asked me that.
But now what do I do?
Right. Well, and I've just taken the stance that no matter what they ask me, they're going to get the real answer. Right. Yeah. Of anything I've been through and anything that I've done, that I'm not going to sugarcoat it, because they're asking for a reason. Yes. And, if I don't give that raw, real answer back, then I'm not helping them on their journey at all. And it's worked, because they continue to come talk to me as we go through this, which has been a lot of fun. That's that.
Absolutely.
I love that you're doing all of this, because, in a sense, you can see how they're all intertwined, with what you do.
And thank you for saying that, because I feel like, I've had to justify it. And we get into this space, especially again, in the entrepreneur and business mindset, where people say, well, just pick one thing and focus, or,
why?
Just drill down. And that never worked for me.
No, and that's somebody giving you advice on how they work, not how you work.
Exactly.
And that's why I hate advice sometimes, because people want to coach you or guide you on what they're struggling with. Right?
Yeah.
And it's not healthy for the other individual.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's actually been probably one of my favorite things in this role of coaching and mentoring, is helping people reconnect with their own intuition. Because I firmly believe that we have the answers within us. We've just been programmed for so long to ignore what we already have and to look externally for the approval or for,
Yes.
the permission or, any sort of thing where it's just kind of like, hold on. If you can learn how to reconnect with yourself and to be able to have those conversations where you're actually, in essence, kind of coaching yourself, there's so much gold that is there to be mined as opposed to looking externally for all of that.
Yeah, and I think if people would just try different things, because how they're upgrading their society, their whatever, is said, hey, you gotta go, get one job and work it forever, or do whatever, their upbringing is. And outside of really taking a hard look at themselves is go taste, go experience different things, go get in the game until you figure out you.
Oh, absolutely. And I found that, aside from that like pivotal moment, passed out on the bathroom floor, really nothing has been the overnight success. We see that so often where it's like someone just all of a sudden shows up. Right. Exactly. And I feel like everything that I've done, even just look at how I explained to you all the different things I've got going on. This led to this, and then I found this piece and that changed the trajectory here. It's all the micro changes that we experience. And again, it's assimilating the information, it's assimilating the new experiences, and that opens the door for the next thing.
Absolutely. And I love that you put that in there because, a lot of people don't look back on past wins, past losses, past this, that, and the other to see how that shaped them for what they're doing now. It's like you even said earlier with your event, where in 9 weeks you pulled off an 11-day event, but if you hadn't been already planning events and everything else, you wouldn't have been prepared for that moment. I think people get really lost on trying to not only not know themselves, but live somebody else's life.
Yes.
They see somebody else's success. They see somebody else's journey and they think that's what they should be doing.
Right. And probably even more, they're probably only seeing the highlight reel.
Yeah. The Facebook side of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just kind of like you're not seeing the insomnia from 3 to 4 a.m. every freaking night. Like you're not seeing, all of these different things. And tragically, look at even just this week, we had 2 amazing trailblazers and visionaries and entrepreneurs take their own lives just this week alone. And I think that there's something to be said for this idea of, don't believe all the hype. Keep in mind, like we've got marketing people, we've got brand specialists and PR people who are always showing our best sides. Unless we as human beings are willing to drop the facade and to engage in the conversation, don't believe everything you read.
Yeah, it's like a friend of mine, Dr. Stevie Dunn, she talks about it every once in a while, that she had a really bad problem of putting people on pedestals and thinking they were more successful than they were. And her eye-opening moment is when she found one of the industry leaders in her field and took the gal out to a coffee and they got talking. And she realized that this industry leader, who is an icon in what they do in their marketplace, this, that, and the other, business wasn't profitable. They were actually upside down and going back. And she's like, it was almost a gut punch to think somebody was so successful, but then it was, wow, why do I keep putting people on pedestals when they're not probably at that level that I think that they are?
Yeah, I love that. And I love that she was able to use that moment as a curiosity question about herself, because I feel like that's so often, it's easy to blame someone else and say, oh, well, they're not being transparent or they're not being authentic if they're only ever showing the good. Okay, that's fine. That might be one thing that's true. But then the question really becomes, and what about you? How are you showing up in this conversation? Why do you feel it's important to elevate them or to assume this? Or, you know what I mean? Like there's always an invitation to look at how we show up in each of those scenarios. What are we bringing to the table in our assumptions, in our judgments, in our own self-doubts that we are elevating someone else or their experience over our own?
No, absolutely. That's huge. That's huge. I found even on my journey as I continue to move forward that, I was really good about being a face out there and making people see my career a hell of a lot more successful than it was a couple of times along the way. And the more that I've been the authentic and I've put that real Donnie side out a lot through this podcast and everything else, it's been a lot of fun,
taking the mask off, being just me, and it's been a blast going through that experience. But, how do you teach somebody to take the mask off, be vulnerable, and put themselves out there? I mean, how does somebody embrace that, especially being a single parent, running a full job? I mean, people are so scared to let people see their world and life. I mean, how do you teach somebody that skill?
I love that question. I think that, like so many other things, again, there's some nuance to it, and there's multiple layers. And, I liken it to the idea of climbing a mountain. Even though as you're going around the mountain, you've got the same vista, like you're dealing with the same shit. But the next loop around, you're higher up on the mountain. Yep, you're back at the same view, but now you've got a different perspective on it. And you're not at the top yet. There's still more to go. But, again, it's this constant evolution. I think more specifically, one of the big things that I talk about a lot in pretty much everything that I do is the self-awareness component. Because I think that until we're at a point where we are not only just aware of ourselves, but we can then understand what we need in that moment of how to either pattern interrupt or to break out of a cycle, or honestly take care of ourselves. Like, self-care is huge, absolutely huge. But if you aren't connected enough with yourself to know that you're running yourself into the ground, then you're not going to realize, oh wow, I need to block the next 2 hours and turn off my phone and just go sit outside for a minute. Like different things like that. Yeah. There's a lot of really small practical things that are very doable, day to day. But until you take the time to really deeply assess where you are and what you need, you're never going to prioritize it because you're just not thinking in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. The other day, my dad walked up to me and goes, "Hey," he goes, "I know you're doing a lot of things. You got a lot of things going on." He goes, "Would you like me to come out and mow your small farm for you? I'll come out once a week and do it." And I love that he asked, but I turned him down. And the reason that's my time. I can get on a tractor for 2 hours and just go. Right. Yeah. And I can listen to a book if I so choose. I can, be lost in my own thoughts. And that's where a lot of my best thoughts come from. But that's my sanctuary. I'm going to get on that thing. Nobody's going to mess with me. It's my world. I can completely tone out. So I get it. I love it. I love it. So where's all this taking you? What a hell of a ride. And thank you for being so courageous to pull your ass up off the floor. Where's all this taking you?
Oh, that's such a good question.
That's why I asked.
Yeah, that makes sense. Something about being a really good conversationalist. I think, there's a part of me that I know where I'm going, but I don't necessarily know how things are going to show up. So for me personally, within, myself and my kids, one thing I didn't mention to you is that I bought this old fixer-upper house that had been abandoned for years and years. And actually, before it was abandoned, it was inhabited by hoarders. So I'm not kidding when I tell you it took 200 contractor-sized trash bags just to clear out the basement. There was a car door in my attic. It has been a crazy, crazy adventure. So when I think about, where is all
Wow, that's all I got to say to that. But go ahead.
Oh, I know. Sorry, I just kind of slipped that in the conversation, as if it's normal, right?
Right. Because everybody should have a car door in their attic.
Apparently. I'm pretty sure that there were some hallucinogenics that were involved with the people that were here prior to me that thought that was.
Did they leave any behind? No, I'm kidding.
It's just so weird. It was such a weird experience. We kept saying
that means they actually had to have the thought of a car door belongs in an attic. They had to carry it up there and put it in there. That's
yeah. Again, I mentioned the hallucinogenics. Something had to have been off. But I think too, watching my kids and how they related to the home and this process of us doing this together has been an absolute game changer for us, not only financially, security wise and, being in the right school district and all of that kind of stuff, but more how we interact and how we come together for a common purpose. So to answer your question as far as where is all this taking me, my first thought comes to myself and my kids. And, it's the idea of like, we can finally get the construction done, stop living in the renovation process. But I only have a couple years left with them before they leave for college. And so that drives so much of the decision making that I have in front of me now. So, I love speaking. I love traveling. Often I will try and double up as much as I can, or I'll book all my travel when the kids are at their dad's, so I'm not missing out on that time.
Right.
And we have this thing that we are going to all 50 states before they leave for college. And so we've been doing road trips and crazy stuff. We're up to 33 states, and I think we're going to clear New England this summer. That's our plan. So yeah, it's where all this is taking me personally is living a life of intention that has that level of connection and interconnectedness. Not codependent, because that's the life I used to live.
Right.
But then, what that means for the bigger picture. There's a book in the works. There's 2 podcasts. There's live events. There's more speaking. There's more traveling. So, in essence, you're just getting the start of me here.
That's awesome.
Pretty much, I guess, what I'm trying to say.
Well, that just means, that you've had a hell of a journey so far, but the journey's fixing to get really good. It's, as you continue to rev up. So it's going to be fun to watch as you continue to climb your mountain, if you will. Huh? Did you see that?
There you go. Nice callback. Oh my gosh, I love it.
So how do people find you, especially if they want the single parent help, they want the event plan, they want the wedding help? I love the idea of your university on the wedding planning. How do people get in touch with you, reach out to you to say, oh my God, I've been looking for you all my life. How do I find you?
I love that conversation. Let's see, starting with the Single Parent Summit, it is very simply thesingleparentsummit.com, and it is thesingleparentsummit.com. And then of course we're the same on Facebook group, facebook.com, / the Single Parent Summit. On the Arabella brand, Instagram is a great way, Facebook as well. Everything, I'm very fortunate. I was early enough in social media that everything is consistent between Arabella events, for the wedding brand, and then wedding planning DIY. And then of course, I think probably just the easiest way is any of the social media, Tonia Adleta. I'm happy to connect with people and just get involved, and Recovering Church Girls will be coming very, very soon, and I'm super excited about that. So yeah, just come find me and let's continue the conversation.
Yeah, that's huge. Just make sure we hook up on all the channels so I can make fun of you on Twitter and everything else too.
Let's do it.
No, that's awesome. Tonia, I got to tell you, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Here's the right hook I always throw everybody at the end of my show, so you're forewarned. But if you could leave my audience with a phrase or thought or some sort of statement that they could put in their tool belt that they could take with them for the rest of their journey, something that maybe when they're stacked up against it, that they can pull out and say, I remember Tonia said to do this. What would it be?
I'm going to give you a combination of my words and Plato's.
Okay.
I think, again, that idea of the unexamined life is not worth living. So there's an invitation there to really pause and to be able to really assess what we're doing and is it working and does it line up with who we are. And I think the second part of that is breathe. Just breathe. Because when you're in it, and when you're really in it, sometimes you forget to breathe. And the next thing you know, it's 10 years later and you are still holding your breath. That was my reality. I had to learn how to release the fight or flight mentality and behavior to really just be all in where I am now. And that was a process. But awesome. Like I said, sometimes when you're in it, all you can do is just breathe, and that's okay.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Tonia, thank you so much, dear, for being on the show. I've really enjoyed it. You're awesome. Keep rocking. And
thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Awesome.
Hey guys, seriously, thanks for listening to this badass episode. I love doing these. I love to hear people's stories and journeys, but what I love most is if you can comment, if you share, if you can tell your friends about this podcast, that would mean everything to me.